Have you ever felt a presence so chilling it sends shivers down your spine and makes your heart race uncontrollably? Welcome to Sinister Stories, where we uncover the darkest corners of reality and delve into tales that defy explanation. Today, we bring you a harrowing true account that will leave you questioning the boundary between the natural and the supernatural. Imagine living in a seemingly ordinary home, surrounded by the echoes of laughter and everyday life, only to discover that something malevolent lurks in the shadows, waiting to unleash its terror. This is the story of Lucas, a man whose life took a sinister turn when an innocuous childhood toy transformed into a vessel of horror. Picture a quiet night in an old family home. The clock strikes 10 p.m., and Lucas is alone in his room, the only sound the soft rustle of pages turning in his book. Suddenly, a bone-chilling voice pierces the silence, whispering, "Do you want to play with me?" The words send a wave of fear crashing over him, freezing him in his tracks. As the night unfolds, Lucas grapples with the inexplicable presence that threatens to consume his sanity. What begins as a subtle unease escalates into a nightmarish encounter that challenges his perception of reality. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the light becomes a reminder that the supernatural is very real and disturbingly close. Prepare yourself for a journey into the unknown, where fear and mystery intertwine to create a story that will haunt your dreams. If you're a fan of spine-tingling real-life horror stories, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel ***, and share it with friends who dare to explore the eerie and unexplained. Join us as we unravel the terrifying events that unfolded in Lucas's home and discover whether some secrets are better left buried. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into this unsettling tale, where every moment is drenched in suspense and every shadow hides a story waiting to be told. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story from Sinister Stories. Your next sleepless night begins now. Our tale begins in the late 1990s, nestled in the heart of a quiet suburban neighborhood where the nights are long and the shadows seem to stretch a little too far. Lucas's family home stood as a relic of bygone days, its weathered facade hiding secrets within its aging walls. The house, built in the early 80s, was a sprawling structure with high ceilings, antique wooden floors that groaned underfoot, and countless nooks that whispered of forgotten memories. As dusk settled, the house transformed. The once welcoming glow of the porch light dimmed, casting elongated shadows that danced eerily across the lawn. Inside, the air grew thick with a sense of foreboding. The hallways, dimly lit by flickering bulbs, seemed to close in, their silence only broken by the occasional drip of a leaky faucet or the distant hum of nocturnal creatures. Each room held its own story, portraits with eyes that seemed to follow your every move, and corridors that led to places best left unexplored. Lucas's bedroom was a sanctuary of sorts, cluttered with books and personal mementos that spoke of his quiet, introspective nature. The window overlooked the dense woods that bordered the property, where towering trees swayed ominously in the night breeze, their branches clawing at the darkness like skeletal hands. The forest was a place of mystery, rumored among the locals to be haunted by restless spirits and unseen entities that thrived in the obscurity. The attic, a place Lucas rarely ventured, was the epicenter of impending horror. Filled with old trunks, forgotten toys, and remnants of past generations, it was a repository of the family's history and its hidden nightmares. The air in the attic was perpetually stale, carrying the scent of aged paper and decaying fabric. Cobwebs draped from every corner, and the dim light from a single, small window cast ghostly patterns on the wooden floorboards. On one fateful day, Lucas's younger sister, Emily, decided to rummage through the attic, driven by curiosity and the lure of nostalgia. Amidst the dusty relics, she uncovered a grotesque doll that seemed out of place among the otherwise benign assortment of toys. Its porcelain face was cracked, eyes hollow and staring, and its once vibrant dress now faded and tattered. This discovery set the stage for the series of terrifying events that would soon unfold turning the serene family home into a locus of supernatural terror. As night falls and the family settles into their respective rooms, the stage is set for the unknown to awaken. The old house, with its labyrinthine corridors and shadow-laden corners, becomes a character in its own right, silent, watchful, and harboring secrets that are about to resurface with a vengeance. As days turned into weeks following Emily's unsettling discovery of the grotesque doll, subtle yet increasingly disturbing signs began to permeate the household, hinting that something was terribly amiss. It started with faint, almost imperceptible sounds echoing through the house at night. Lucas would lie in bed, attempting to drift into sleep, only to be awakened by the soft creaking of floorboards above him. At first, he dismissed it as the old house settling, but the noises became more frequent and deliberate. There were times when the sounds mimicked footsteps pacing rhythmically just outside his door, or the faint jingling of a tiny bell that seemed to emanate from the attic. These noises were accompanied by an eerie silence that felt oppressive, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Another unnerving sign was the sudden and unexplained drops in temperature. On warm summer nights, Lucas would find his room inexplicably cold, his breath visible in the frigid air despite the blazing heat outside. These chills were accompanied by a sensation of being watched, as if invisible eyes were piercing through the darkness, scrutinizing his every move. The temperature drops were often localized around the attic area, making Lucas increasingly uneasy about the space he rarely visited. The most disturbing sign was the pervasive feeling of being constantly observed. Lucas began to sense a presence in his room, especially when he was alone with his thoughts. He would catch fleeting glimpses of shadows moving just out of the corner of his eye, only to find nothing when he turned to look directly. Objects in his room seemed to shift ever so slightly when he wasn't paying attention. Books sliding off shelves, pens disappearing from his desk, and his favorite blanket always slightly out of place. This relentless sense of surveillance gnawed at his sanity, making it difficult for him to relax even in his own sanctuary. Adding to the growing unease, Lucas noticed strange malfunctions with his electronic devices. His radio would switch on by itself, playing static-filled whispers that he couldn't decipher. The family's old television set, which had long been broken, would flicker to life late at night, displaying distorted images and unsettling symbols that seemed to appear and disappear at will. These unexplained glitches created an atmosphere of paranoia, making Lucas question the safety of his own home. Perhaps the most eerie manifestation was the distortion of reflections in mirrors and windows. Lucas would catch glimpses of figures standing behind him in reflective surfaces, only to turn and find no one there. These apparitions were fleeting, but left a lingering sense of dread. Mirrors in the hallway would fog up without reason, and sometimes, when Lucas glanced at them, he saw not his own reflection, but that of a pale, emotionless face staring back at him with hollow eyes. As the nights progressed, these unsettling signs escalated in intensity and frequency. The once sporadic noises turned into persistent disturbances, and the temperature drops became severe enough to cause physical discomfort. The feeling of being watched intensified, leading Lucas to feel anxious and restless during the day as well. His interactions with his family became strained as he struggled to explain the inexplicable events plaguing their home. Each new sign built upon the last, weaving a tapestry of fear and uncertainty that left Lucas desperate for answers. The culmination of these first signs created an atmosphere thick with tension and foreboding. Lucas found himself constantly on edge, every creak and shadow feeding his growing paranoia. The once comforting walls of his childhood home now seemed to close in around him, harboring secrets that begged to be uncovered. The mystery deepened as Lucas pondered the connection between the haunted doll and the escalating supernatural occurrences, setting the stage for the harrowing confrontation that awaited him. As the eerie signs continued to escalate, Lucas found himself at a crossroads, torn between the instinct to ignore the unsettling events and the burning desire to uncover the truth behind the haunting presence in his home. Lucas's nights were restless, plagued by vivid nightmares where shadowy figures loomed over him, whispering threats and promises of eternal torment. By day, his mind raced with questions. Was the doll merely a relic of childhood fears, or was it truly a conduit for something far more sinister? The unexplained noises, sudden chills, and the feeling of being watched gnawed at his peace of mind, leaving him in a constant state of anxiety. Each morning, Lucas attempted to dismiss the events as tricks of his imagination or the natural settling of an old house. Yet, a part of him couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. His curiosity, once a benign trait, now served as both his torment and his beacon of hope. He yearned to understand what was happening, to find answers that might put an end to the relentless fear consuming him. Desperate for clarity, Lucas reached out to his older brother, Daniel, who had moved away years ago. Their conversations were sparse, but Daniel had always been the rational one, the voice of reason in the family. However, when Lucas recounted the strange occurrences, Daniel dismissed them as typical teenage hysteria. Frustrated and feeling isolated, Lucas realized he couldn't rely on others to help him navigate this nightmare. Determined to take control, Lucas began researching the history of his family home and the mysterious doll. Late nights were spent poring over old newspapers, local legends, and obscure books on the supernatural. He discovered unsettling stories of previous occupants who had experienced similar hauntings, all linked to inexplicable objects left behind. The doll, he learned, had a dark history, believed to be cursed, changing hands through generations, each owner plagued by its malevolent presence. Armed with this new information, Lucas faced a daunting decision. Ignoring the events meant living in constant fear, potentially allowing the malevolent force to grow stronger. Investigating further, however, risked drawing the entity's attention, possibly inviting greater danger into his life and the lives of his loved ones. The turning point came one sleepless night when Lucas sat in his room, the oppressive silence only broken by the distant sound of dripping water. He felt an overwhelming urge to confront the source of his fear. The safety of ignorance no longer appealed to him. He needed to face the unknown to reclaim his peace of mind. With a deep breath, Lucas decided to delve deeper into the mystery, fully aware of the potential consequences. Gathering his courage, Lucas prepared himself for the confrontation. He armed himself with tools he thought might offer protection: salt, a flashlight, and a sturdy piece of wood. The act of preparation brought a flicker of determination to his eyes, overshadowing the fear that had long held him captive. He knew that to survive, he had to confront the darkness head-on, no matter how terrifying the outcome might be. As midnight approached, the house seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with anticipation. Lucas made his way to the attic, each step echoing ominously in the silent house. The dim light from his flashlight cast long, dancing shadows on the walls, heightening his sense of dread. He reached the attic door, pausing for a moment to steel himself before pushing it open and stepping into the unknown. With his heart pounding and every nerve on edge, Lucas knew that confronting the source of the haunting was inevitable. The attic door loomed before him, an ominous gateway to the darkness that had taken hold of his once safe home. The air was thick with tension, each breath feeling like inhaling shards of ice. Armed with his makeshift tools, salt, a flashlight, and a sturdy piece of wood, Lucas steeled himself for what lay ahead. Lucas pushed open the attic door, which creaked loudly, reverberating through the silent house like a mournful wail. The narrow beam of his flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing the cluttered space filled with forgotten memories. Old trunks, tattered furniture, and heaps of dusty belongings created an oppressive environment, making it difficult to move without disturbing something lurking in the shadows. In the far corner of the attic, partially hidden beneath a moth-eaten blanket, lay the grotesque doll Emily had discovered. Its cracked porcelain face seemed to twist in an eternal grimace, eyes hollow yet seemingly aware. As Lucas approached, the temperature in the attic dropped noticeably, his breath now visible in the frigid air. The flashlight flickered momentarily, casting erratic shadows that danced menacingly around the room. Summoning every ounce of courage, Lucas reached out and lifted the blanket, revealing the doll in its entirety. The once lifeless eyes now gleamed unnaturally, reflecting the dim light with a sinister glow. Suddenly, the attic seemed to come alive with an otherworldly energy. The air grew thick, making each breath a struggle, as if the very atmosphere was infused with malevolence. Without warning, the doll's mouth moved, its voice distorted and echoing unnaturally through the confined space. "Do you want to play with me?" The words were not just spoken, but seemed to resonate from the walls themselves, amplifying the terror that gripped Lucas. His hand trembled as he held the flashlight, the beam wavering as his fear threatened to consume him. As Lucas stood there, paralyzed by fear, the attic transformed into a nightmare landscape. Shadows elongated and twisted into grotesque shapes, reaching out towards him with invisible claws. The once silent space was now filled with a cacophony of whispers and distant screams, voices overlapping in a dissonant symphony of horror. Objects began to move on their own, trunks sliding open, old toys clattering to the floor, and the very foundation of the attic seemed to groan under the weight of unseen forces. The doll's eyes seemed to follow Lucas's every movement, unblinking and full of malevolent intent. It began to move on its own, slowly standing up despite its fixed position moments before. The porcelain joints creaked ominously as it lifted its tiny, articulated arms, pointing directly at Lucas. The room's temperature plummeted further, and an oppressive darkness enveloped him, making it difficult to see beyond the immediate vicinity of the doll. Panic surged through Lucas as he realized the depth of the supernatural threat he was facing. He attempted to back away, but his legs felt like lead, refusing to respond. The doll advanced, each step deliberate and unnaturally fluid, as if defying the laws of physics. The whispers grew louder, surrounding him, filling his mind with fragmented thoughts and unsettling images. In a moment of sheer desperation, Lucas brandished the piece of wood he had brought, attempting to defend himself against the encroaching terror. The attic seemed to warp and twist around him, the boundaries between reality and nightmare blurring. The doll halted, tilting its head as if contemplating his resistance. For a brief second, everything was still, the oppressive silence before the storm, but Lucas knew that the confrontation was far from over. As the tension reached its peak, Lucas remembered the salt he had brought. Recalling old legends about repelling evil, he began to scatter the salt around the perimeter of the attic. The act seemed to disrupt the malevolent energy, causing the shadows to recoil and the whispers to fade into silence. The doll paused, its lifeless eyes dimming as the protective barrier took effect. Lucas seized the moment, determined to banish the darkness once and for all. With the salt creating a barrier between him and the doll, Lucas made a swift retreat from the attic, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as he closed the door behind him. His heart raced, his breaths shallow and rapid, but a sense of relief washed over him. The immediate threat had subsided, but Lucas knew that the confrontation was only the beginning. The true battle against the supernatural forces lurking within his home was yet to come. The temporary relief Lucas felt after repelling the doll with salt was short-lived. As days turned into restless nights, the supernatural disturbances escalated, pushing Lucas to the brink of his sanity. The true nature of the terror lurking within his home was about to be unveiled, leading to a revelation that would forever change his understanding of reality. Driven by an insatiable need for answers, Lucas delved deeper into the history of the haunted doll. His research led him to old town records and forgotten newspaper clippings that chronicled a series of mysterious disappearances spanning decades. Each victim had been a child, last seen playing with a peculiar doll identical to the one in his attic. The doll was rumored to have been crafted by a local toymaker with a twisted obsession for creating lifelike toys. Legends spoke of the toymaker's descent into madness after the tragic loss of his own child, believing that infusing his creations with a piece of his soul would bring his child back. One stormy night, as thunder rumbled and lightning illuminated the darkened rooms of the house, Lucas experienced a vision. He found himself transported back in time to the early 80s, witnessing the toymaker's desperate attempts to animate his doll. The air grew thick with sorrow and rage as the toymaker performed a dark ritual, binding his spirit to the doll in a futile attempt to resurrect his lost child. The vision faded, leaving Lucas shaken to his core, realizing that the doll was not just an inanimate object, but a vessel for a tormented soul seeking vengeance. Armed with this chilling knowledge, Lucas understood that the doll's malevolent actions were fueled by the toymaker's restless spirit. The doll was a beacon for other lost souls, drawing in unsuspecting victims to perpetuate the cycle of fear and despair. The realization dawned on him that the terror he faced was part of a much larger, more sinister plan orchestrated by the trapped spirit within the doll. As Lucas pieced together the grim history, the supernatural forces in his home intensified. Doors slammed shut on their own, windows shattered without cause, and the air became thick with oppressive energy. The doll's presence was no longer confined to the attic. It began to appear in different parts of the house, each appearance more aggressive and terrifying than the last. The whispers evolved into anguished screams, and the shadows coalesced into ghostly apparitions that haunted Lucas's every step. The weight of the revelation crushed Lucas. He realized that merely repelling the doll with salt was insufficient to break the curse. The toymaker's spirit was bound to the doll by dark magic, and unless the curse was lifted, the cycle of horror would continue unabated. The truth was a double-edged sword. While it provided clarity, it also exposed Lucas to the full extent of the supernatural menace he was up against. Determined to end the nightmare, Lucas sought out ancient rituals and sought the help of a local historian who specialized in occult practices. Together, they uncovered a ritual that could potentially sever the toymaker's spirit from the doll, but it required immense courage and precision. The night of the ritual arrived, cloaked in an eerie stillness that belied the chaos to come. As Lucas prepared to confront the malevolent force one final time, he felt a surge of dread mixed with a flicker of hope. In the dead of night, Lucas and the historian began the ritual in the attic, where the doll's presence was strongest. Incantations filled the air, and symbols were drawn meticulously to channel protective energy. The temperature plummeted, and the room seemed to close in around them as the spirit fought back with every ounce of its remaining power. The doll levitated, its eyes burning with an otherworldly light, as it attempted to overpower the ritual's protective barrier. Shadows writhed and twisted, forming grotesque shapes that clawed at the participants, threatening to drag them into eternal darkness. As the final words of the incantation were spoken, a blinding flash of light enveloped the attic. The oppressive energy lifted abruptly, and a deafening silence followed. The doll dropped to the floor, its porcelain face now devoid of life, eyes blank and unseeing. The toymaker's spirit had been released, the curse finally broken. Exhausted but victorious, Lucas felt the weight of years of fear and uncertainty lift from his shoulders. The house, once a bastion of horror, began to feel like a sanctuary once more. In the quiet that ensued, Lucas reflected on the harrowing journey he had endured. The revelation had not only exposed the dark history of his family home, but had also tested his resilience and courage. The supernatural terror that had plagued him was now a part of his past, but the scars it left behind were a constant reminder of the thin veil between the natural and the supernatural. The night following the climactic ritual marked the end of Lucas's immediate battle with the supernatural, but the aftermath revealed that the horrors he endured had left an indelible mark on his life and his family's home. In the days after the ritual, the atmosphere in the house began to shift subtly. The oppressive weight that had once filled the room seemed to lift, replaced by an uneasy calm. However, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that something still lingered. Shadows seemed to dance just beyond the edge of his vision, and faint whispers echoed through the hallways at night, reminders that the battle was not entirely won. Lucas found himself haunted not only by the memories of the supernatural events, but also by the psychological scars they left behind. Sleep eluded him, replaced by restless nights filled with nightmares of the doll's hollow eyes and the toymaker's tormented spirit. Daytime brought no relief, as the constant state of alertness drained his energy and frayed his nerves. He became withdrawn, struggling to reconnect with his family, who remained oblivious to the true extent of his ordeal. Physically, Lucas bore the marks of his confrontation. He carried unexplained bruises and scratches, remnants of a violent struggle in the attic. His once vibrant eyes now held a haunted look, reflecting the fear and uncertainty that had become his new reality. Friends and acquaintances noticed the change, sensing an aura of darkness that clung to him like a shadow. Despite the ritual's success in severing the toymaker's spirit, several mysteries remained unresolved. The doll, though seemingly lifeless, occasionally moved imperceptibly when Lucas wasn't looking, hinting that residual energies or other malevolent entities might still be at play. Items in the house continued to shift subtly, and the temperature fluctuations persisted sporadically, suggesting that the house itself held secrets yet to be uncovered. The tension within the family grew as Lucas struggled to communicate the truth of his experiences. His sister Emily, still traumatized by her near encounter with the doll, distanced herself, afraid to return to the attic or even acknowledge the presence of the haunted toy. The parents, desperate to restore normalcy, suggested moving to a new home, but Lucas hesitated, feeling an inexplicable connection to the place that now seemed both a sanctuary and a prison. One evening, as Lucas sat alone in his room, he noticed the doll's reflection in the mirror. For a fleeting moment, its eyes seemed to follow him with a knowing gaze, a silent promise that the darkness was never truly gone. The reflection blurred, leaving Lucas with an overwhelming sense of dread and the realization that some horrors are never fully vanquished. Determined to protect his family and reclaim his peace, Lucas took it upon himself to remain vigilant. He began documenting every strange occurrence, seeking out ancient texts and consulting with paranormal experts in an effort to understand and contain the lingering evil. The house, once a source of comfort, had become a battleground where Lucas stood guard against the unseen forces that threatened to resurface. As weeks turned into months, the supernatural disturbances became less frequent but never entirely ceased. The house settled into a deceptive calm, but Lucas knew better than to believe it was entirely safe. The experience had irrevocably changed him, instilling a deep-seated wariness and a relentless pursuit of answers. The terror he faced had woven itself into the very fabric of his existence, a perpetual shadow that would forever remind him of the thin veil between the natural and the supernatural. Months had passed since Lucas and the historian successfully performed a ritual to sever the toymaker's spirit from the haunted doll. The immediate terror that had once consumed the family home had seemingly subsided, but the echoes of that harrowing night lingered, casting long shadows over Lucas's psyche and the household. In the weeks following the ritual, the house gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by an uneasy calm that felt more like a temporary reprieve than true peace. However, Lucas couldn't shake the lingering sensations of unease. At times, he would catch a glimpse of the doll's lifeless eyes in the attic mirror, a silent reminder of the darkness that had once dominated his life. Lucas struggled to reclaim his sense of normalcy. Nights were the hardest, as sleep eluded him, replaced by restless tossing and turning. Nightmares plagued his dreams, vivid and terrifying reenactments of the confrontation with the doll and the tormented toymaker's spirit. Even in his waking hours, the memories haunted him, the fear of recurrence never fully abated. He found himself hyper-aware of every creak and shadow, his mind perpetually on edge. The strain of the ordeal took a toll on his relationships. His sister Emily remained distant, her own encounter with the doll leaving her traumatized and reluctant to speak of the events. Their parents, while relieved to see some calm return, were equally affected, their once cheerful household now tinged with an unspoken tension. The shared trauma created a rift, each family member grappling with their own fears and memories in silence. Despite the ritual's success, certain mysteries remained. On some nights, Lucas noticed subtle changes in the house, objects slightly out of place, unexplained noises, and fleeting shadows that seemed too deliberate to dismiss. The doll, now stored securely in a locked cabinet, occasionally emitted faint whispers, barely audible but undeniably present. These residual signs suggested that the malevolent energy wasn't entirely vanquished, leaving Lucas with a lingering sense of vulnerability. One evening, as the sun set and darkness enveloped the house, Lucas sat alone in his study, the weight of his experiences pressing down on him. He gazed into a mirror, the reflection staring back at him, bearing the marks of his ordeal, hollow eyes and a haunted expression. The room felt colder than usual, and for a split second, he thought he saw the doll's reflection standing behind him, its eyes following his every move. He turned swiftly, heart racing, only to find an empty room staring back at him. The realization settled in. The terror was etched into his very being, an invisible scar that would never fully heal. Determined to protect his family and ensure that the darkness remained at bay, Lucas took on the role of a vigilant guardian. He immersed himself in research, seeking out ancient texts and modern theories on the supernatural, hoping to find ways to strengthen the protective barriers around his home. Late nights were spent reinforcing the protective symbols and charms, each one a small act of defiance against the unseen forces that sought to reclaim their hold. The house, once a sanctuary, had transformed into a battleground where the lines between the natural and supernatural blurred. Lucas lived with the constant awareness that the veil was thin, that the horrors he had faced could resurface at any moment. The perpetual shadow of fear and uncertainty became a part of his daily existence, a reminder that some battles are never truly won, only managed with unwavering vigilance. Amidst the darkness, Lucas clung to moments of light. He found solace in small victories, days without disturbances, nights of peaceful sleep, and the rare smiles shared with his family. These fleeting moments of normalcy fueled his determination to persevere, to keep fighting against the encroaching darkness. He began to believe that perhaps, with enough strength and resolve, the shadows could be held back, allowing his family to reclaim their lives from the grip of supernatural terror. Yet, deep down, Lucas knew that the threat was never entirely gone. The doll remained a symbol of the darkness that had once dominated his home, a constant reminder of the thin line between safety and peril. The whispers, though faint, served as a warning that the battle was ongoing, that vigilance was essential to prevent the malevolent forces from rising again. The terror he had faced was now an integral part of his reality, a perpetual shadow that would forever shape his existence. Lucas's journey through fear and mystery had irrevocably changed him. The experience had stripped away the innocence of his childhood, replacing it with a hardened resilience and an unyielding determination to protect those he loved. Yet, the cost of this newfound strength was a life forever touched by darkness, a constant reminder that some horrors linger long after the shadows have receded. Have you ever faced something unexplainable that changed your life forever? Share your stories in the comments below. Discuss your theories, and don't forget to subscribe to Sinister Stories for more content that challenges logic and explores the darkest corners of fear and the supernatural. Your experiences might be the key to unraveling mysteries that lie just beyond the veil.